Hi, David here with Volgistics. As the end of the year approaches, reports become more and more valuable. One of the primary reasons many people use Volgistics is to be able to get the information out of it in the format they need for grants, internal statistics, taxes, and more. By far, the most common end-of-year report is a service report, and that includes things like total hours, unduplicated volunteer counts, shift counts, and monetary values. No matter which report you need or when you need it, I want to take a look at for a few minutes here to explain the purpose and use case for each style of report. Then we'll look at building a couple of reports here at the end. In the reports page in your account, you'll find several collapsed sections like we have here on the screen that specify different reporting formats and styles. The awards report at the top can be used to list the volunteers who are either eligible to receive a service award or have already been presented an award. Awards are a feature in Volgistics that allow you to track the service milestones that are met for each volunteer. For example, recognizing the volunteers who've served a certain number of hours or for a certain number of years. If all you need to do is find the volunteers who reached one of these milestones, the checklist page may be an easier option for you. For example, choose Checklist here from the menu, and towards the bottom of the screen in the second half, check the box next to an award you want to preview. In this case, I'll just look at any award, and at the bottom, click the Go button. The next page will show you a list of the volunteers, the award that they are eligible to receive, and allows you to kind of play with that information to see it at a glance here on hand. The next style of report is a batch report. And these are used to export the service that's posted from the post page in your account. The post page allows you to post service hours for multiple volunteers at once, even from the schedule. If you want to find that, or if you find that your schedule is pretty accurate, then that could be a good option for you. Excel spreadsheet reports do just that. Export volunteer profile information into the Excel format. Excel is a powerful tool that lets you graph information and see where trends are headed. These reports are designed to work around the maximum row and column limits in Excel, so they will separate the volunteer information into multiple worksheets. If you want to see everything on the same worksheet, the volunteer list reports are probably the better option there and can be formatted in Excel too. We'll take a look at those here in a minute. The service details reports are the most commonly used report style. They allow you to export service information for a specific date range. For example, if you want to see the total hours and unduplicated volunteer count for this year or any other date range, this is the report to use. We'll learn more about how to build one of these reports together here in a couple of minutes. The service summary reports are a continuation of service details reports. However, you cannot include the details for each individual date or service entry like you can do with the service details reports. The summary reports add the option to see totals for multiple years, months, or quarters in a single report. For example, this year's volunteers or assignments, how many hours, last year had how many hours, and each additional year that I want to include in the report, give me a total to see separately so that I can compare those. The statistics reports are great for tracking volunteer retention because they can count the number of volunteers who've historically had each status and the number of years and months the average volunteer was active, inactive, or applicant. You can also see statistics for the number of volunteers in each age range, who have had an average number of hours served monthly and weekly at different breaking points, and all of the drop downs in your account. For example, the number of volunteers with a certain t-shirt size, at a certain gender, ethnicity, education background, and more. The volunteer list reports are your generic, do a little bit of everything style of report. These reports can export nearly anything from your volunteer records aside from their photos, documents, and a few other pieces. They can be formatted in PDF and Excel and are a great option for volunteer phone number lists, checklist details, contact details, and more. We'll walk through building this style as well at the end. The volunteer profile reports are a prettier form of the volunteer list reports that gather the information in a more printer-friendly way, whereas volunteer list reports put the information in more of a table. These can include volunteer profile photos and are a great use for a directory of sorts, but they cannot be formatted in Excel, only PDF. The labels reports allow you to export volunteer information in the sticky back labels, Avery labels sheets. These are things such as maybe address labels or name tags. Those are two of the more popular options that would be used here for a labels report. The assignment profile reports can export assignment profiles and descriptions into a PDF, similar to what the Opportunity Directory does online, but in a more printer-friendly form. The Opportunity Directory is going to be obviously the online version of this report and is typically a more useful tool. And lastly, the schedule reports will export the schedule information to a PDF. Most used for things such as the daily sign-in sheets or a printable view of the weekly or monthly schedule. If you need to see a certain volunteer schedule in the Excel format, the volunteer list reports can help you with that maybe in a better way than these can. Since the schedules usually change though, looking at the schedule within your account will give you the most up-to-date information most of the time. Now that we've described the use case for each report style here on the page, I want to take a closer look at actually building a couple versions of these. Service details reports and volunteer list reports are going to be the two of the most popular styles that we offer. So let's take a look at those two here. If I expand service details and click the link at the top of that section to create a brand new service details report, I'll be given a 5-tab tutorial. I can determine how that information in the report is organized, maybe by the volunteer's name, maybe by the assignment if I want to see hours by assignment instead. I can determine whether or not I'm listing volunteers or maybe only the volunteers who have service to report is the option I'll choose for this example here. I can also determine which details are included. If I want to include each individual service entry and the date the volunteer came, the time they left, or if I only want to include the totals, maybe I don't need that much detail in the report. For this example, I will include the details just to get a good idea of how that would be formatted and how that looks. In the Fields tab, I can determine what information is included in the report. In this case, maybe I want to see the date that the volunteer served, the time they came, maybe the time they left, the assignment they served in, and the hours. I'll also be given some additional service fields here. If maybe you have those set up in your account, you may see something different here. Service notes, if maybe I want them to collect notes when they served, I could be able to see that along with their service details as well. Maybe an unduplicated volunteer count, maybe some additional fields from their profile, like their email address if I want to contact them if I have questions, or phone number, or other fields from their profile. The Page Design tab is a lot like the Print Preview, where you can determine how that information is laid out on the page. In the Include tab, I can choose whether I'm formatting that report as a PDF or in Excel. I can go through and determine what date range service is pulled from. In this case, with this sample data, I'm going to go ahead and just choose the month of May to see if we have some good information there for us to look at. And then I can also determine what assignments are included. By default, everything is. If I wanted to include maybe only one site, place, or assignment, I could select that here in this dropdown, as well as below that, determining which volunteers are included in the report if I didn't want everyone. For this example, I'm just going to include all of the volunteers I have. In the Save tab, I can name that report here, and I can determine whether or not it's automatically generated. Maybe I want this report, let's say on the 1st of each month, I want it emailed to me so I can see the hours maybe for last month. I could do something along those lines. If I'm going to go ahead and save this report and run it so we can take a look at that here in a minute, before we actually look at that report, while it's processing, let's look at the service or the volunteer list report. Again, I'm going to expand volunteer list and click on the link here at the top to create a brand new one. The tutorial is going to be very similar across the board for every report. In the Options tab, I can choose how that information is sorted, maybe by the volunteer's name or birthday or start date, date of last activity, and so on. I can determine what fields and information is included. Maybe I want to see their name. Maybe I want to see, let's say maybe their phone numbers. If I want to get maybe a phone number list, maybe their email address, and other fields I may want to include in that report. Page Design tab, again, is a lot like that Print Preview where you can determine how that information is laid out on the page. In the Include tab, I can format that as a PDF or Excel. I can determine which volunteers are included, and in the Save tab, same options you'll see there where I can set up that report to run on an automatic schedule and email it to me. Maybe I want to see a birthday list for next month and get a list of the volunteers whose birthday it is to be prepared to recognize those volunteers in some way. I'm going to go ahead and run this report here as well. Going back to the mailbox, those reports will appear. So I can see my service details report is finished. If I click on that report, I can see that I have a list of volunteers, the date they came, the time that they were there, the assignment they performed, and the hours. At the very bottom of the report, I will get a grand total hours, so I can see how many hours for everyone. I can also see that unduplicated volunteer count that I chose to include here as well. I have 106 unique volunteers in the month of May who served with my organization. Now, back in the mailbox, if I refresh the page here and see the volunteer list report, I'm going to see that same kind of information where I have the volunteer's name, their phone numbers, and email addresses, and that is all I chose to include on that report. If you choose to include more information, especially if you choose to include a significant amount of information, I recommend formatting that report in Excel. Maybe you'll be able to get everything to fit in a landscape page orientation, but the more information you include, the more that information may end up wrapping to the next page, making it a little bit more difficult to read through. Whereas Excel, because it's just a table and the columns just keep extending through the page, usually it's a little easier to read through a lot of information that way without having to worry about page breaks and wrapping and that kind of detail. So there you have it. This was a little longer video than we normally post, but hopefully it's fruitful and provided information that you can use. And just please don't hesitate to let us know if you have questions on reporting or anything else. We'll reply promptly. Our support team answers questions on building reports all the time. So I like to say if it's going to take you more than, let's say, 5 minutes to figure out how to build the report on your own, then you might as well ask the support team and save that time. The support team will typically reply within just a few minutes during our business hours, and we're eager to help. So thank you again, and see you next time.